all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Welcome, my fellow players. This year marks the 400th anniversary of William Shakespeare's death, and millions of people are still watching, acting, and reading his plays in 118 different languages all around the world. And more than 2 billion copies of his plays have been sold. Somebody once asked me what I thought Shakespeare would say if he gave a TED Talk. I said, I had no idea, but he would definitely want to know who's been cashing all his royalty checks, right? When he owes that man some money. As a visiting actor and instructor, I have the great privilege of teaching Shakespeare's plays to teenage and preteen students. In my experience, getting kids to appreciate and even love him is easy. This is what I do. When I first get to a classroom, before I have a chance to say a single word, I have one of the students come up to me and spit in my face. This accomplishes 2 things. 1, it wakes up the class, doesn't it? And that's important because so many people hear the name Shakespeare and they're seized with a sudden urge to sleep, right? Or worse, to throw up. It's no wonder that the 2 most popular translations of his plays into modern English are called No Fear Shakespeare and No Sweat Shakespeare. Fear and sweat. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? But my surprise spitting serves another purpose. It transforms me from some boring bald guy with a Shakespeare shirt into Shylock from The Merchant of Venice. And Shylock has just been spit upon for the last time by that smug, hypocritical, anti-Semite Antonio. He hath disgraced me and hindered me 500,000, laughed at my losses, mocked at my gains, scorned my nation, thwarted my bargains, cooled my friends, heated mine enemies. And what's his reason? I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands? Organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. An angry man, Shylock. Thank you. Thank you. But maybe he has good reason to be. I was teaching a class of high school seniors recently, and as I was waiting there for my designated spitter to turn me into Shylock, I noticed some posters on the wall. They were covered with pictures of bombed out cities, troops in formation, Nazi flags, tanks, and so on. One poster was entitled, "The Brutal Human." It showed emaciated prisoners at Auschwitz concentration camp and a lampshade made of human skin. So, when I became Shylock and I asked, if you poison us, do we not die? I pointed right at that poster. And in that moment, in that suddenly silent room, every kid got Shylock. They got Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays aren't relics. They aren't fossilized bones that we dig up, scrutinize, and catalog. The characters he created are alive. And they have secrets to tell us, even after all these years. But we can only learn their secrets by listening to them, by watching them, by becoming them. And none of that's possible if we confine them to ink and paper. If we want children to appreciate and even love Shakespeare, They need to experience his plays through performance. So, is the point to turn every kid into the next Matt Damon or Natalie Portman? No. Although most of the kids wouldn't mind that at all. The point is, wonderful things happen when we get kids on their feet to act out Shakespeare's text. First and foremost, they understand him. Reading by itself is never enough. But when you combine reading with listening and watching and acting, suddenly Shakespeare's characters and his language, they come to light. It exposes them to the most powerful, most influential writing in the English language. It builds confidence. If a student can unravel and act out a scene or a speech from Hamlet or Julius Caesar or Much Ado About Nothing, lots of other tasks might seem relatively easy. It strengthens public speaking abilities. Again, if a student can get in front of an audience and move them with their words, with their acting, that's a skill they'll be able to use for the rest of their lives. 5, it channels passion. Children can be intense, emotional people, and their attentions can be fleeting. Shakespeare keeps them engaged and gives them a healthy and creative means of expressing themselves. And finally, 6, Shakespeare teaches universal life lessons. When children become his characters, when they act out his stories, they get to explore new possibilities of existence without having to live them first. In other words, while Shakespeare won't always turn kids into great actors, he can help turn them into great people. Now, I suspect that most of us, forced to study Shakespeare in our youth, didn't receive all these miraculous benefits. But let's find out, by a show of hands, who read the following plays in high school or junior high? Julius Caesar. All right. Midsummer Night's Dream. Oh, a few more hands. Romeo and Juliet. Oh, that's nearly everybody. Did anybody have to analyze a sonnet? Oh, I'm so sorry. All those for whom Shakespeare was a source of delight and inspiration in school, let me hear a hearty huzzah. Ready? Huzzah! Okay, not bad, but many fewer. Let's face it, for most of us, Shakespeare in school was uncomfortable, unwelcome, and of uncertain value. A sort of literary enema, all right? I mean, that's what it felt like for me. I mean, I knew I was supposed to like him. I just couldn't. He was too awful. It wasn't until after college when I realized that the playwright I learned to hate in the classroom was nothing like the one I learned to love in the theater. What I'm saying is that Shakespeare isn't the problem. The problem is how he's been taught. He's the world's most famous author for good reason. No writer, not Homer, not Dante, not Cervantes, not J.K. Rowling, rivals him in terms of his art or influence. His characters have become part of our mental landscape. For example, even if you haven't read or seen a single play, you might be familiar with this man, right? That would be Hamlet. And this woman. Right? And maybe this guy right here. That would be Bottom, Midsummer Night's Dream. Sort of an ass, Bottom, yeah. And of course, these two star-crossed lovers. And how about all his words? Shakespeare wrote 884,000 of them. He's credited with being the first to use or inventing more than 2,000. Here are a few of them. Might recognize some in there. Cold-blooded, bedroom, bedazzled, assassination, affliction. For today's purposes, however, maybe the most important word he was among the first to use is our theme. Reverberate. Yeah. TEDx 2016. Brought to you by our sponsor, William Shakespeare. Yeah. He's not getting paid for it, but here he is. And finally, how about all those famous sayings? He's easily the most quoted author of all times. If we had every one I mean, if we were able to list every one of his, well-known sayings, we'd be here forever and a day, right? So let's start with forever and a day. Here are a few more. You probably know a few of those up there. A few of my personal favorites. To thine own self be true. Brevity is the soul of wit. Something wicked this way comes. That's a good one for Halloween. Brave new world. And of course, the granddaddy of them all. We're going to do this one together, right? Ready? To be or not to be. Yes. In case you didn't get the memo, that is the question. Yes. So, if Shakespeare's so brilliant, why is he also such a pain for students, for many teachers, and I think for many of you listening to me right now? Here's a hint. Were his plays meant to be read silently or aloud? What do you think? Aloud, right? Wrong. Trick question. His plays weren't meant to be read at all. They were meant to be heard and watched and acted. They were meant to be experienced. He wasn't a historian. He wasn't even a novelist. He was a playwright. And plays should be performed. I mean, doesn't that make sense? Imagine trying to appreciate Adele or Dr. Dre or Billy Joel or Prince by studying their lyrics, but never listening to or singing one of their songs. Or would all those fans of the latest blockbuster Hollywood hit really pay good money to go into a theater and analyze the script? I don't think so. And yet, that's what we do to Shakespeare when we treat his plays merely as fodder for exams and essays instead of what they could be, opportunities for joy. When I first began teaching Shakespeare, I met a 7th grade girl I'll call Maria. Maria was a natural actress, captivating, confident, intuitive, vulnerable. When she would play Juliet, it was like she'd written the lines herself. It was wonderful. Her teacher told me that Maria had been through a lot of personal tragedy. Her mother had left when she was little. Her father had recently died of a drug overdose. She was quiet and shy, didn't fit in, not a good student. But when she got in front of the class and performed Shakespeare, she radiated a happiness that everyone can see. And she was fabulous. So I was new at this back then, and so I was curious. So I asked her one day what it was about Shakespeare she enjoyed so much. Cheerfully, without hesitation, she said, because I can pretend to be somebody else for a while. Maria's answer for me is at the heart of why learning Shakespeare through performance is so valuable. When children become his characters or see another person become one of his characters, when they mourn the loss of a loved one as King Lear, or wrestle with depression as Hamlet, or fall hopelessly in love as Juliet, they get a chance to feel what they might not be able to express in words. In Shakespeare's words, they learn that they are not all alone unhappy in this world, that beauty lives with kindness, that there's a divinity that shapes their ends, that their life is a miracle. So, a few action items before I leave you. For all my wonderful English teachers out there, I know you have a million things to do during the school year, and I hope Shakespeare play is one of them. I encourage you to view him not as another bitter pill your students have to swallow, but as an extraordinary teaching opportunity. Get your kids on their feet to act out his text, Don't just have them analyze a passage, have them also memorize and perform it. Make them watch a few scenes on YouTube. Maybe invite an actor to class. I hear they don't have much to do during the day. I know if you do these things, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. For my parents, grandparents, and all those traumatized by high school memories of Shakespeare, give the man another chance. Treat yourself, treat your kids to one of his plays. Some tips before you get to the theater. Read a synopsis of the play. Figure out who the characters are. Maybe find a few famous lines and talk about them with your kids. Then, sit as close to the action as you can, right in the splash zone. And don't panic when the wave of words washes over you, because it will. That's kind of the point. Besides, nobody understands every word of a Shakespeare play. Easy comprehension has never been his goal. His goal is simple: to make the coming hour o'erflow with joy and pleasure drown the brim. Joy can be a scarce commodity for some children, as it can be for all of us. School is difficult. Life is difficult, and difficult things are often unpleasant. But Shakespeare should always be an opportunity for joy. And joy can be the difference between a child hardly trying and trying hard, between dropping out and showing up, between hiding in the shadows off stage and embracing their unique role in this epic production called life. All the world's a stage. Thank you.